I now bring you Gladiator Sparticus, Story 1. That Was Then, Chapter 1, by Yusun Beck. I have three questions when we talk about this book. First question this book is made to explore, because this is a totally fictional book. What if men lived forever? Would they continue to sin? Second question, what would it be like to experience historical events and be able to recall them by looking back from our present day as a historical figure? Third question, this is a fictional book and not meant to add or take away from the Bible. It is meant to create a historical fiction or historical fictional hero that examines his own life, faces tragedy, and runs into malevolent machinations of principalities. What would you do if you were in his shoes? Thinking about that, how would you apply that to your life when you face difficult times? Job faced many challenges. So, when you face hard times and challenges, do you run away from those difficult things and get shaken to your core, or do you choose to do the right thing? This hero will have two choices. Will he choose to do what's right or what's wrong? This is only chapter 1 of many more chapters. Let's find out as we open up the story. What's his time to you and to me? I used to be fixed on how short time could be. My old frame of mind was that I had to seize the day, carpe diem. One fateful day, my life was changed, though. It is currently present day, where I watch cars go to and from, and one can smell the bustle and nasty smog of these engines, which by far has improved vastly since the 1900s. Of course, I should be used to it, but I am surely out of my time. And I come from a place where the air was much cleaner than this place ever was. I feel the hardened brick buildings and stare outside, peering upon the concrete jungles whose billboarded branches blot out the sun in place of arrows, trees, and night mists. I can no longer taste the sharply dense fog, the crisp air, a fresh summer's breeze, or a morning's dewdrop on my tongue. Yet the sun's heat does beat upon my tongue, and the taste of the stale air sits upon thine tongue as a pine mouth vinegar flavored bitter wine. Fresh fruits and vegetables from the vine have become preserved, canned, or frozen seconds these days, as if nothing is new under the sun. Although the mornings are still silent as they were in the past. I quickly hear loud horns and cars these days, yelling and screeching louder than the sirens blaze themselves. As far as the eye can see are millions and billions of people, which is an unheard number. It's just an unheard of number. Oh, I remember my promise, though. I have a great commission to reach these people, and there is a special purpose here on this earth for me to do battle as well. Sometimes I see the news on television and I think about my mission. I think about the Great Commission and I think about how big the world is. This world is enamored with war and battles just like it was in my day. Like I said, nothing is new under the sun. People watch their screens and listen to the breaking news. There's one news story after the next, one war after the next, new battles to be fought, new battles to be won, the newest peace. Perhaps you may ask why this current day's hustle and bustle is so foreign to me. I've lived on this earth for some time and seen much, but I cannot dismiss my past, which I remember so fondly. I would never change where I am, most certainly. Time is an interesting prospect, no matter how troublesome, precarious, or difficult your present circumstance is. Each moment is meant to be a lesson because there is a sovereign, predestined purpose and lesson to learn in that exact moment. There is always a reason. I was born of Sparta. So now you start having a lot of questions because Sparta existed during the BC timeline and cars were well after the 80 timeline. Perhaps I need to first go back a little bit to help you understand more about me. To understand me, you need to understand some history about Sparta and its timeline. So let's begin there. A timeline could be used to highlight a nation's greatness, but a leader must make difficult decisions during tumultuous and troubling times. This is the battle of Thermopylae. But how did we get here? Let's begin by telling you that my home nation was under the concept of creating a warrior nation with military prowess and pride, and the founding of Sparta was in 900 BC. Added to the greatness of Sparta was the colony Tarentum and Magna Graecia colony, around 706 BC by the coastal sea, which continually allowed for the eyes of its inhabitants to gaze upon the docks, enjoying a beautiful view of the glamorous sea. A timeline could be used to highlight a nation's greatness, but a leader must make difficult decisions during tumultuous and troubling times. This leads us to the Battle of Thermopylae. But how did we get here? Let's begin by telling you that my nation was under the concept of creating a warrior nation with military prowess and pride, and the founding of Sparta was in 900 BC. Added to the greatness of Sparta was the colony Tarentum and Magna Graecia colony around 706 BC by the coastal sea, which continually allowed for the eyes of its inhabitants to gaze upon the docks, enjoying a beautiful view of the glamorous sea. Later, during the time frame of 650 BC, Sparta had its share of grumbles and revolts as far as the eye could see. Thus, the Messenian revolt was crushed like a simple little flea. Afterwards, Sparta took hegemony over the Peloponnesian League by allying with Corinth, Elis, and Tegea. As our strength as a nation grew, just like a strong oak tree, one could indulge and regale a person with the tales of Sparta's military prowess, even though we had a few battles that we struggled through and brought us to our knee. We could never flee. Loss was not an acceptable word or term, for I shall suffer death, you see. Bring me to my wife Eileen on thine shield, for she is my torch of light to me. Hence, let me face victory, or on my shield carry me. Sparta is such the great land of thee. This is my home and my heart's key. This land is where I am simply just meant to be. Thy men shall face no battle to ever fear and flee. The Sparta women are more than the men of other nations to see. So the men are giants of this war industry. Part of the Spartan training involved the Infant Fit for Life program. As an infant, the training immediately begun to be a Spartan warrior at birth with an inspection. We were either taught to survive and be great with no defect or fail. I was bathed in the finest of wine and ignored well by my mother when I cried. My mother and her nurse boasted of how strong they brought me up. I then entered military training as a child, whereas modern day children can be spoiled and don't even have to consider the military at all. These people are like a bunch of Athenians. But time has taught me that diversity can yield power in and of itself. It was so long ago, but I believe I was about 7 or 8 when I entered military training. All I remember was being removed from my parents and forced to train. My life was nothing but fighting, and we would often haze the new guys as I got older. I feared failure because it did lead to being beaten and flogging, but I was more concerned about the shame of it all. I got to live with my wife Eileen at age 30, but I was praised as a hero. It was all confusing then. In any case, I'm wavering off course with the story. My point in this journal is that Sparta was a powerful military nation that trained its citizens from birth up to old age to be lifelong soldiers. However, no warrior nation with such greatness could just be left to be. Sparta hears rumbles and rumors of war as Persian warriors and mythical immortals lay waste to lands afar and pounce about, conquering nations. They turn their eyes toward the Greeks, beseeching an audience with the king of the land of Sparta, Leonidas, descendants of Hercules, aiming as such for indignations. How could Sparta refuse to join the ranks of the mighty and powerful Persians? The concept of war has smoked up since Persia took up arms, since ambition's twinkling eye iterations. Persia had in its goal to conquer the world through all its determinations. Any nation which stood against them was lacking in all innovations, and any nation that stood against the tide was considered guilty of the worst provocations. The Persian king wanted every knee to bow in heavy dedications. Refusal often led to an onslaught of deadly considerations. There was a Persian and a Spartan who defined the time of 480 BC at its prime. I shall focus specifically on the Spartan king Leonidas. He is the inspiration that gave me lessons to be a great warrior. I had learned much from him. As a child, he used to battle, train me, teaching me much before I needed to endure the Spartan trial of manhood. From his lessons instilled upon my head, they all helped me to gain strength, and I truly came to the battlefield and understood the Spartan ways to fight in battle. I was taught to battle by a battle master who was favored. He was a favored warrior of Hercules himself, and blessed by the gods themselves. This shall be such the greatest feat of all that we are meant to undertake, or so I thought then. Leonidas took me and trained me at the young age of 7 years old. Not born to Athens, where men were girlish poets, but I was born to the almighty and powerful Sparta, where boys became real men, and the women grew away from their girly games into strong women of true fortitude that would handle any man around the world. O Sparta, such a great nation! My training lacked nothing either, for the sense of the morn's rising sun and the smoke's dimming light still stay upon my nostrils memory from my intense training. Obedience, hardship, and conquer are how we must fight. So if we did anything less, it would lead to a horribly tragic end. We could fear our commanders more than an enemy. However, the worst thing is failure to achieve glory. At our births, our weak are tossed to their deaths. Weakness is never tolerated in our society. We either rise above or die to the wolves. Our commanders and their orders are our shield from destruction. The formation grants victory, and victory in battle, just as we were taught to sleep together in the pallet beds broken apart by our very hands. As I said, the formation grants victory in battle, just as we were taught to sleep together in the pallet beds broken apart by our very hands. Scars from breaking apart the bedding with my bare hands without the usage of knives can be felt on my hand next to the calluses from my swords and other instruments of war and practice. I could still taste the morning dew, melted frost, and stream waters from those training days we were thrown to the forest with no food, water, or help. That river Eurotas provided so much for us during our training. 12 years old was a big year where I shed my tunic to receive my first cloak. Why was I chosen to be special? I was one of the Hippae, an elite private god of the king. I had a special shield that was different than the rest, called a hoplon. Among the Spartans, my mantle placed me higher than the other soldiers. The sword was a joke because I mastered the spear. As the leader of the pack, my people would be in the front and organize into a strong, enclosed phalanx where we could feel the skin and armor of our brothers in battle fervently and relentlessly pushing forward behind a firm wall of bronze. The sound of clanging was soon followed by the abrupt sounds of yelling and horrid screaming as our enemies could be felt being crushed under our shields and spears. Some of us may have carried swords. It was a spectacle to see as we pushed forward, and you could hear the stomps and yells of our soldiers pushing forward. Hua! We would yell, intimidating, striking fear into the very heart and soul of the enemy. Our King Leonidas himself would lead us in bringing down these other kings who would come to Sparta as so called gods because he was blessed as a man of Hercules himself. Bring your false gods, and we will slay them too, for they all bleed the same blood. Going forward, the Persian king Xerxes stepped forward after his father Darius was defeated at Marathon, trying to get into Europe via Greece. The Athenian hoplites terrified the Persian army away just about 10 years prior to the Battle of Thermopylae. Persia owned about two-thirds of the known world as it was. Xerxes fancied himself equivalent to the gods and wanted more in Athens. His goal was to start at Sparta, yet King Leonidas initially refused his diplomatic request. The diplomatic exchange did not get seen, but it was heard that Leonidas gave the diplomat Spartan kindness for his simple gesture. It was also said that the oracle gave bad news, but we had to meet the Persians at battle during the religious festival. At first, we marched out for battle and came to terms with what may be our certain demise. We started our preparations to prepare for a battle to the death. What came next was the battle. So, what do I remember? One could see the beauty of the land of Thermopylae's green trees, lone confined valley, high rugged mountains, and smooth cliffs. One could hear the whooshing, swooshing, splishing, splattering, and splashing of the running water, and feel the hot mist of the hot springs gushing down the sides. You could taste the fresh air sitting upon your tongue from the open land. The Persian forces were trying to come through Greece, and this was one of the places where Xerxes needed to come through, and King Leonidas had us ready to meet him upon his entrance at the hot gates. Poseidon struck down hundreds of the Persian ships trying to make landfall and flank us in most certain death, with a gnarly storm. Each ship fell one by one in unison and uniform. Their bodies float in the water, lifeless and no longer warm. Our men were merely just hundreds of men. We were just under 1,000 as we lay our eyes upon much more than tens of thousands of Xerxes' men waiting to slaughter us. Those eyes of mine have seen many elites incoming as a troop of battle scorpions most hastily swarm. Side by side, my brothers hungrily stood, spearing each soldier's skin as if to have struck them like a line storm. They fought against our powerful, battle hardened men, and we were seasoned. Therefore, this phalanx was our home and our norm. Together in the barracks, we stayed because this field of battle was our retreat, home or dorm. In our natural form, we could fight in the dead of heat, adoring a blistering ice storm. We held his forces off for a few days. Xerxes thought he was a fierce king with an army of immortal battle masters, but we were determined to turn his lightly armored men into a group of shattered clay disasters. Even whence he came upon his elite guard, when we came upon them, our spears were switched out with the blade, and the real onslaught had begun. We had torn his men to shreds as if they were flogged in the square by morning star, but it was the Spartan blade that happened upon their flesh and bones. Our blades quaked against their bones, causing them to yell with such ache. Ah, these immortals seemed to fall to the ground one by one as such an evaporated snowflake. It was a sad day that 300 could simply take apart well over multitudes beyond 10,000 fakes. These soldiers must spend their days lazily eating cake. This was a victory that we thought we would surely take. King Leonidas told his private guard just prior to the final moments of the battle. They have more than enough arrows to blot out the sun. So we shall fight in the shade until our death. The battle was deadly. It cost Xerxes two brothers and tens of thousands of men while holding off the Persian king for a moment. During this battle, the king dismissed hundreds of the Greek soldiers, leaving only a contingent of 300. Unfortunately, a man who was called Nightmare, and whose life was spent traveling as a merchant, who also enjoyed the love of money, existed and became a blight who is to forever be known to the horror of the Greeks this day as a bad dream. Nightmare told the Persian king of a secret pass to surround our remaining 300 soldiers. Engulfed by such the sea of arrows at the end of my days I was. Dispatched by such the weapon that I despised and hated the absolute most. How disgusted and atrocious this was. There were so many arrows that we did fight in the shade. We fought with such valor, and the arrows pierced my brothers' necks, arms, heels, and eyes. I watched in horror, and then my heart was pierced. An arrow shot right through my body, piercing my heart and killing me instantly. Everything went dark. Everything went dark to a point where I was unable to see anything but total darkness. I was absolutely blind and fell to the ground in darkness with a hole in my heart. No one was there to carry our bodies back on our shields. And Eileen, my torchlight, will no longer brighten my sight.
In the wake of the silence deep and cold, shattered dreams, lying stories old untold. Whispers of sorrow in the shadows hold. A land once of gold, now worn and old. Ghostly faces in the midnight's pale embrace. Eyes that once held hope, now lost in space. The cries of the night bring forth the trace of battles fought and the empty place. Oh, the echo of the battlefield remains. In hearts and souls there's only pain. The song of sorrow through the bloodstains, forever engraved, silent and plain. Broken homes and shattered walls we rebuild. The echoes of war in our hearts instilled. Memories of what once was forever filled with tears of pain, no dreams fulfilled. In the ashes we see new light anew. Dreams that rise like morning dew. From the shadows to sky so blue, a hope that binds us and holds us true. Oh, the echo of the battlefield remains. In hearts and souls there's only pain. The song of sorrow through the bloodstains, forever engraved, silent and plain. Oh, the echo of the battlefield remains. In hearts and souls there's only pain. The song of sorrow through the bloodstains, forever engraved, silent